November 20th, 2022 meeting of the Dover School Committee, Sherborn School Committee, and Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee. My name is Sarah Gutierrez-Dunn, and I call this meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. We are pleased to hold this open meeting at Dover-Sherborn Middle School this evening, and we are also Zooming and I think live streaming as well with DSC TV. So please note that this meeting is also being recorded. As you can see, we have several members of the school committees present in person this evening, and I believe we are also joined remotely by Colleen Burt from the Dover School Committee. And remote participation by school committee members, as well as the public, is permitted by the Act relative to extending certain state of emergency accommodations signed into law by Governor Baker on July 16th, 2022. First on our agenda this evening is community comments. And
you're getting some notes in the chat with the Zoom.
They can't hear you, so if you can just.
So I don't know if we are Zoom.
Microphone.
That?
Uh-oh. Did that just disconnect us?
Oh, God.
All right. If folks in the Zoom, hopefully this helps. We've reconfigured our microphone. Sound like that's better? Okay, great. So first on our agenda this evening is community comments, and we have provided a Zoom link for those who wish to make a comment, but for whom it is not possible or preferred to attend in person this evening. And I'm so pleased to see the group of people that is assembled here with us today, especially our friends from the Pine Hill 4th grade. So thank you for joining us tonight. And I would like to propose that out of deference to the 4th grade students that are visiting us here tonight, we take community comments in two sections this evening. First, I would like to invite any community comments concerning the proposal that our Pine Hill friends have brought to us, to the school committees, to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day on the school calendar. The school committees will consider this proposal and take a vote, after which we will ask for community comments concerning any other matters before moving on to the rest of the evening's agenda. And that way our 4th graders will be able to see the outcome on their proposal, and though they are, of course, welcome to stay with us for the entire meeting, there is no obligation, and we understand that the hour may be getting late. So, that being said, I would like to ask, is there anyone who would like to make a community comment this evening concerning the proposal on Indigenous Peoples Day? I believe that we will be
Yep, they want to come up here.
Too.
Yeah. All right, so if you just want to come up in front of the microphone and we can take turns. If you can tell us your name and your address.
My name is Grayson and I live on 4th Idaho Lane. I come from Pine Hill Elementary, 4th grade, and I believe that Columbus Day should be changed to Indigenous Peoples Day because Columbus and other European explorers didn't actually discover this land because the indigenous people were already here. In addition, the indigenous people were treating the earth good, and they had thriving communities and using their space wisely, and they weren't trying to get more. These are values our community of Dover-Sherborn also has. This concludes why we should change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, your name and your address.
My name is Max. I'm from North Main Street, 7. I believe that changing Indigenous Peoples Day for Columbus Day would be a great because Indigenous people helped build the American culture and started North America. This is important because kids in the future at DS can know what the Indigenous people did to make our country the country.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you, 4th graders.
Thank you. Are there other community comments concerning Indigenous Peoples Day? Anyone on the Zoom?
Any hands?
Oh, yes, please.
Nope, she's muted.
Give us a moment here. We'll try to unmute. Or maybe if you're muted on your end. All right, sorry about the technical difficulties. Should we try this again? Ms. Pereira, I think we might have this worked out. Would you like to try again?
Hello?
Yes, hello. Sorry about that.
I don't know if they can hear me.
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can.
We can hear you.
Maybe enter in the chat. We can hear her.
Would you like to make a comment? Maybe we're muted. Sorry. Would you like to make a comment?
Ms. Pereira, can you hear us? Would you like to make a comment?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
I am so sorry. I didn't mean to disrupt you guys. Like, I
No.
just logged in and I heard you say Zoom, if you know anybody on Zoom, so I was trying to say me.
No, not at all. Did you have a comment that you wanted to make about Indigenous Peoples Day?
No.
It's a brave new world. We're all adjusting to these hybrid meetings, so
I didn't mean to disrupt it.
not at all.
Actually, okay, sorry about it.
Not at all. Thank you. Is there anyone else, either in person or on Zoom, who'd like to make a comment about Indigenous Peoples Day? All right, did we still have a video presentation?
We do. So just before we begin, as you know, on the June 14th meeting that we had with the Joint School Committee, at that point, our third graders from Pine Hill School did a video presentation under the leadership of our literacy coach, Jen Ryan, and their third grade teachers, Cam Ritchie and Marlene Cindy Sidman. So many thanks for the leadership of your teachers in encouraging you to follow your heart and your thoughts and bring us this call of action to consider adopting Indigenous Peoples Day. So thank you to those of the fourth graders that are here. Thank you to the many fourth graders zooming in and streaming from home. You're here with us in spirit, and at this point, some of our friends created a short video recap for our school committee members of what was discussed in June so that you can consider whether or not you'd like to make a motion to vote. Thank you, Logan.
Last year, we spent a lot of time learning about the history and experience of different indigenous peoples in North America. We learned about some of the things that happened in our country when Christopher Columbus came to this continent. As students, we practice historical perspective taking by studying primary sources and considering all sides. We feel strongly that because of some terrible things that occurred, we should not have a holiday named Christopher Columbus. Instead, we should honor the many indigenous nations in our country by renaming Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples Day.
We also learned a lot about how school policy is changed and how we can, as citizens, can affect change through written communication. After doing a lot of research, we wrote to you last spring to share our opinions. We are here tonight to remind the community of how important this change is to our school committee. We would like to recognize that Indigenous peoples are native to this land and to recognize the suffering they have faced since the Europeans arrived.
Please help us honor the resilience and tremendous contribution of the diverse indigenous history and culture of our country by voting in favor of officially changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day in our school calendar.
Wow, thank you. I think that deserves a round of applause. All right, well, Well, thank you both to our friends from Pine Hill who took the time to be with us this evening, and to your classmates who put together this video for us, and for all of your classmates for your important work on this proposal. I am so proud and impressed not only by your excellent work, your thorough research, and your very persuasive writing and public speaking, but also that you had the courage to speak up and try to change our community for the better. So thank you to all of you. Do school committee members have questions, comments that they would like to offer concerning the proposal on the table? Chloe?
I would also like to say thank you and let you know that I was very impressed. You guys raised an issue, you were concerned, you studied about it, you did research, you thought about, discussed it among yourselves, and you found the solution, you proposed it, and this is very impressive. It is impressive to know, to see that you guys learn that if something has been going on a certain way, it doesn't mean that's the best way, and it's good to read about it, learn about it, discuss with everybody, listen to each other, and come up with a solution. Thank you, and thanks for your leadership.
Thank you, Chloe. Other questions, comments? Yes.
I just want to share how proud I am of all of the students here today, and I hope that you continue in this spirit of research, thoughtful consideration, advocacy, and always take the courage with you forward to stand up when you think that a change needs to be made. And I applaud you all. Great, great job.
Others? School committee members?
I just want to thank Mrs. Ryan and the teachers for teaching our students that they have the power to make change through their writing. And I think when we talk about Portrait of the Graduate and what we want to prepare kids for outside of DS, this is exactly what we're thinking about, and it's such an authentic experience. And so thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, to that end, I would like to invite a motion, and since I'm chair of the Dover School Committee, I'll ask the Dover School Committee, in the words of our friends from Pine Hill, to honor the resilience and tremendous contributions of the diverse Indigenous histories and cultures of our continent by voting in favor of officially changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day in our school calendar. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Liz. Any discussion? All right. So I believe that we have Colleen Burt joining us. So in order to take our vote, the Dover School Committee tonight, because we are hybrid, in-person and remote, will be doing our votes by roll call. So I will call out to you all, and I think everyone else can do as they choose, whether roll call or not. But Liz?
Liz Grossman, yes.
Goalie?
Chloe Super, yes.
And Colleen?
She said yes.
Oh, I think you said yes, but we didn't hear it. She said yes. All right. So the motion passes unanimously for the Dover School Committee. Amanda, may I turn it to you for the Sherborn School Committee?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. And I don't know if Geeta is on the Zoom or not. She had joined us. I just want to make sure she's included if she's there. Geeta, are you there?
All right, I don't think I see her.
Yes, we're good to go. Okay. So do we need to have a motion from Sherborn, or can we just do a roll call vote?
You can do a Me Too motion.
Okay. Sherborn, do I have a motion as stated by Sarah Gutierrez Dunn to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day on our school calendar?
Second. That is fine.
Thanks. So you want to make the motion and then someone else?
Was
Yeah.
the motion.
Yeah. Okay.
Second, Christine Walsh.
Okay, thank you. And any discussion? All right, so we'll do a roll call vote too. So Kristen?
Kristen Beverly, yes.
Christine Walsh, yes.
Dennis Quant, yes.
And Amanda Brown, yes. Thank you. And Maggie?
On behalf of the region, I'd just like to just also echo, I can't really say it better than any of the other participants said, in terms of thanking you all, of you, the students particularly, for taking on this challenge. And as the school committee that represents the middle school and the high school, where you'll all be headed in a few years, it's really exciting to see that you're learning how, people can take action and make change for things that are important to you now, because those are things that are really going to help you and sort of help you to be an active citizen as you get older. So congratulations. Do I have a motion, as stated by Sarah Gutierrez, done earlier on behalf of the Dover School Committee, to change Columbus Day observed on our calendar to Indigenous Peoples Day on the Dover-Sherborn school calendar?
Mark so moved.
Do I have a second?
Tim Collins, enthusiastic second.
Great. Any discussion? Great. We'll do a roll call as well, just to kind of match the others. Angie Johnson?
Angie Johnson, yes.
Lynn Collins?
Tim Collins, yes.
Mark Healy?
Mark yes.
Maggie Sharon, yes. And Judy Miller's absent tonight. Oh, goodness gracious me. You're sitting there. And Kate Potter.
Kate Potter, yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you again to the Pine Hill students. Your motion has carried unanimously, and we will be observing Indigenous Peoples Day in Dover-Sherborn schools. All right, and you're welcome to stay with us, but it might be a bit of a meeting left for the evening.
And your very proud principal might need a hug or a high
Probably be in my room.
Mr. Smith, only 5 more years until they're yours.
All right. So at this point in our meeting, we will return for any remaining community comments, and I will go ahead and read the preamble that I neglected to read before. My apologies. Please remember that community comments are an opportunity for members of the school committee to listen to members of the community. It is not a forum for answering questions or engaging in a debate. We respectfully request that you please make your comments brief, no more than 3 minutes, and that you move the discussion forward by adding new information. Please try to avoid repeating points that have already been made. Once the public comment section of the meeting has been concluded, we will move on to other business, and unsolicited comments from the community will no longer be permitted. This is standard operating procedure in school committee meetings across our 3 school districts. Are there any community comments this evening? And I would ask anyone in person who would like to make a comment to just raise your hand. Mr. Andrews, and we'll also check in with Zoom after you've had the chance to speak.
Hi, Rob Andrews. I live on Miller Hill Road in Dover. I just wanted to publicly thank the school board for engaging in this diversity audit. I mentioned at a Zoom sometime during the pandemic, I mentioned on a Zoom meeting that the work to support marginalized communities saves young people's lives. We know this from research, and I just think the more that our community can unpack and uncover ways to support students that are on the margins of our community, the better it is for all of us, and the better it is for our children. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone on the Zoom who'd like to make a comment?
You have a comment in the chat, I don't know.
Hello.
Hello.
So a couple things. First, thank you for allowing us to participate by Zoom. I'm sure it's an inconvenience for many, but it is also a way to allow more people to participate, so I really appreciate that.
Sure. Could the speaker just identify themselves, please?
Yes. Apologize. My name is Rochelle Nasrallah. I live in Dover at 148 Walpole Street, and I have 2 students at Chickering. The gist of my comment is that I very much support the findings of the equity audit in the report that we're going to hear more about tonight. And it's unfortunate that the comments come before the substance, but nevertheless, I did want to point out one thing that I think is really important in order to facilitate implementation of the important suggestions of the report, which is resources. And before we even get to making our schools better, I and many others, I think, are very concerned about the shortages that our district is experiencing, that our state is experiencing in teachers' aides, in educational staff, up and down the roster of our schools. And so I don't have the answers to that, but I just want to encourage our leadership, and I am assistant and willing to participate in conversations and do anything that's in my power to do, but I really want to make a plea for our leadership to, including our town leadership and the people that set our budget, to help address this problem that is affecting everyone, and especially, to use the wonderful term from Rob, marginalized students. Marginalized students will feel the effects of lack of staff, lack of trained staff more than others. And I think if we're going to ask more of our teachers, they need to have time and support to do more. So thank you very much for taking up these really challenging issues. I really appreciate it for the good of our community and our school.
Thank you, Ms. Nasrallah. Are there community comments?
We had another hand raised on Zoom.
Okay.
That was Ms. Pereira.
Ms. Pereira.
I just wanted to make a comment about the Indigenous People Day being passed, and I just wanted to say that, I have my child. I'm from Boston, and I have a child in Chickering. So, my child is bused to Chickering every day, and just to know that you guys are actually looking at that and acknowledging, that and making a change that's really a big thing for me coming from Boston and coming into, a community that's, it's not my community per se. So just seeing, just that little change. I mean, it's a big change, but, to see that just really shows me that you guys are a lot more, open that, to the change and to just acknowledging that, just acknowledging that it has to be changed in the way that history was taught, and and just being truthful, and some history that's that was taught that's correcting things. Everybody's aware of why it's been changed to Indigenous people, and I just love the fact that you guys are acknowledging that, and that was huge. So, I just really want to say thanks for that.
Thank you, Ms. Pereira.
I feel good at the medical parent coming in.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there other comments?
Sarah, I have an email from a community member.
Sure.
So I received an email this afternoon from a community member who was not able to attend in person or on Zoom, but asked that I share her comments. This is a comment from Bethany Burke at 133 Claybrook Road in Dover, Massachusetts. She writes, I was looking forward to seeing the results of the equity audit. I've only read it through once, but my first impression is we spent $75,000 on this. Where are the hard numbers? Where is the evidence-based research? Are we going to upend our schools for this shoddy data? We need access to numbers, studies, and evidence, or at the very least to find where these programs have been used before and how it turned out for those schools. Who's NYU Steinhardt? I have done a little bit of research and found that the group has pending lawsuits for problems having to do with, guess what, charging exorbitant amounts of money and withholding data and information about their methodology, as well as a lawsuit for civil rights violations. If the concern of this audit is for, and again, we don't know the real numbers, so I'm guessing, say 200 students who feel as though they don't belong or feel as though they don't have enough support, wouldn't it be more logical to bring our considerable resources to bear on helping that small group rather than collapsing the entire school system? Especially when that school system was #1 in the state, top 10 in the nation, and one of the best in the world. Actually, we don't have to look too far for evidence. We've been using these programs right here in schools for years now. Since implementing social emotional learning and cultural responsive teaching, we've fallen from #1, which we held strong for 13 years, and we've bounced about, falling from 1 to 10, back up to 5, and now we're at 9, which tells me that these new programs are not academically sound. In fact, a case could be made that these programs aim to subvert sound academic teaching because it's believed by those developing those programs that our system is fundamentally racist is in quotes, and unfairly privileged in quotes, and that it must be replaced. So the truth is that it wouldn't have mattered if 100% of the community responded positively about our schools across the board in every area. So why did we spend $775,000 on this audit? What Steinhardt has recommended is, rather than pull back from programs that are failing our schools, that we do more SEL, more CRT, invest more time, more money, and more resources, and hire more educators and more consultants, and above all else, most concerning is to have our children take more surveys. The data mining of our children is the lifeblood of these programs, and on it goes. More and more and more, and to what end? We need real numbers, real data, real evidence. We need to know what we are getting in the end for all our investment, our money, our time, our schools, and most importantly, our children.
Thank you, Maggie, and thank you, Ms. Burke. Other community comments?
I also have a comment.
Thanks.
I have a comment also sent to my email this afternoon. This is from Kathy Horrigan, a Sherborn resident on Coolidge Street. She writes, after reviewing the 58-page report and studying it in detail, it is fair to say many of the broad-ranging statements are not backed up by the very statistics cited in the report. An example is that the report states there needs to be broad, sweeping change, yet between 70 and 82% of the very students in our school said that they are happy with where things stand. Although the Dover-Sherborn school system states on every email that they don't discriminate on the basis of race, religion, gender, etc., this very report discriminates against approximately 72 to 78% of all students, since it negatively comments and admonishes against white Christian students and families, especially those who are of upper or middle class. The very families funding the amazing programs at the school, which is one big factor in what sets us apart and makes us the successful, flourishing school we are. If the word white was replaced with black or brown, the news stations would be already at the school and hundreds of picketers would be out front. The audit does not represent special needs students or students with mental health issues, which were promised when the equity audit was being voted on and formulated. The equity audit was funded by outside groups who aren't necessarily in line with the majority of the families or students within the DS community. The equity audit was pushed through and funded by a small faction of DS aid and school committee members who all share the same ideology and philosophy. Only after the audit was voted on, the RFP sent out with questions already agreed upon, were new members added to DS aid. This audit is skewed and does not represent the majority of Dover-Sherborn school students or their parents. Kathy Horrigan, concerned parent of a current and former DS student.
Thank you, Ms. Horrigan, and thank you, Kate, for bringing that to us. Community comments from those with us tonight? Yes, please.
Yes. Hi, my name is Fiona Roy. I live in Dover, so I hope you wrote. Okay, I know some of you here. I'm not sure, like this is our first time to ever be in this meeting. We're not sure if this is the correct time to bring up our, the question. First of all, I'm very like impressed by the changing of the holiday theme thing. I didn't know that third grader and fourth graders can do this, because I'm a third, fourth grader. Yeah. And the the other concern about the calendar that we've been discussing about is like, because I got asked by my own kids, and like I stop at the school like once in a while just to know more about our community and all the kids. And I got asked a lot about the Chinese or the Asian culture thing. Like one of the questions I got asked was like how to say Chinese is like hello or whatever like this, and like what's this culture about? Like they asked about like a spring festival that we have, like New Year thing, Chinese New Year thing. So we're just wondering if there's any way that we can make some kind of like an acknowledgement or some like mark in our school calendar to say this is like the spring festival, like a New Year, Chinese New Year there. Just to, I don't know, in this kind of culture immersive the entire and it's like an evolution to me, like the culture changing the whole world. I just feel, we just all feel like it will be helpful for like our kids here to learn a little bit more about this culture. Maybe this is a starting point of doing this. So yeah, that's just it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Other comments? Yes, please.
Yeah, Nat Paddock, I live in Dover at 100 Dover Street, and I just want to throw out there that, well, first of all, I wish that we did have a way to respond to whatever presentation we're going to see about the equity audit. You know, I've read it, obviously other people have read it, and I'm sure that we all have views and questions about it. I would love it if there was some sort of way for this whole community to connect with the authors of the report to get these very questions answered. I thought that it was actually that was going to happen, and then I realized later on that it was going to be rolled into this meeting, so maybe it's not quite the same. Sorry, are you raising your hand? Do you want to make a point about it?
Yeah, in
Do you
fact.
have an answer?
Yeah, because all the people, I work on it, all the people in it had input into what was put in. So, if you can ask me.
So you're the one?
I'm not the one.
That would be, I feel bad for you.
No.
All right.
But, I mean, we have lots of people working on it, and a lot of them are in this community, so.
Okay, all right.
If you want to ask someone, I'll here.
But I didn't know if, like, within the ambit of this, of the meeting here, if that was permitted, so.
Oh, I have no idea.
Anyway, like I won't, you know, hopefully we can get an answer to that, and maybe a more formal opportunity to focus on it specifically by itself. I'm just going to say from my perspective, this work is absolutely money well spent. It's probably long overdue. And as long as there's, I don't care whether it's 20%, 10%, 5% of this community that feels that it's not being served properly and not actually receiving the public school education that it's entitled to, that's a problem. Like, stop the presses. That's a problem right there immediately. You know, so perceived percentages of the community that either agree with these findings or don't agree with it, I don't see where that's relevant. As long as there are only a few kids, whoever they may be, that are quoting things into this report like we saw, that has to be addressed. The system has an obligation to address that, I'm pretty sure. So I guess that's my only comment. I'll leave it there until I get a chance to talk more with the people who produced the report, and thank you for that.
Other comments? Anyone else on Zoom?
I don't see any hands raised unless there's a video. Doesn't look like it.
All right. In that event, thank you to all who shared their viewpoints with us this evening. That concludes the public comment section of our meeting tonight. And so now I would like to turn it over to our superintendent, Ms. McCoy, to introduce our next agenda item, which is the report from the NYU team concerning the findings and recommendations of the equity audit.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say a few words before I turn it over to our NYU team and the advisory board members that are in the room. The first is I will talk about next steps with the equity audit, but in terms of next steps with Indigenous Peoples Day, coming out later this week will be a new academic calendar for the district, including a change to Indigenous Peoples Day, as well as recognition of many other holidays that are long overdue. due to be recognized on the calendar. So that will be coming to your email boxes soon. I'd like to thank the 4 members of the NYU team who have led us through this process: Sarah McAllister, Lizette D'Souza, Joanna Geller, and Elise Wilkerson, many of the faces you see here on the screen. As was recognized, there are 14 Dover-Sherborn and Boston students, alumni, educators, parents, and community members who went from start to finish with the NYU team to make sure that the questions that were asked were relevant, that the community was brought in for focus groups and responded to the surveys, and then to make sure that the conclusions and the data that they processed and wanted to provide us in this report was within the context of the Dover-Sherborn that they know and recognize. So I'd like to recognize the 4 students who were part of the advisory committee. Some of them are here: Hadassah Daphnis, Long Nguyen, Michaela Pyers, and Douglas Welch. Thank you for participating in this very important process. Alumni Preksha Ashk and Aaliyah McFarland. Thank you. Educators Leah Lee, Laura Romer, and Rob Williamson. Thank you for participating in this. And parents, caregivers Anne-Marie DeBarros Miller, Caleb Dolan, Jennifer Grinnell. Thank you, Jen. Jennifer Valenzuela, and community member Kelly Taylor. So those are the 14 members. We'll make sure that they are known to the community when the report is published beyond just tonight's agenda. And we will certainly be having opportunities for discussion and unpacking the report over the next several months. I also want to thank all the participants. As you saw in the report, there were 1,786 surveys completed. That included 1,230 students, 136 educators, and 420 parents. 22 focus groups comprised of 58 students, 24 caregivers, 26 educators, and school leaders, for a total of 1,900 voices. Again, 1,200 of those were student voices, and as we know, those are the most powerful because they're living day-to-day the experiences that we're creating for them in the Dover-Sherborn School. So many thanks to everyone who participated. As you see, our school committee members are wearing Because Kids shirts this evening. We launched this school year coming off of a pandemic. Last year we hoped would be typical. It was far from it. And everybody emptied their tank, gave all of themselves on the field to make sure that our students could feel some normalcy. We could meet them academically, behavioral, emotionally, where they're at. And at the end of the year, we were exhausted. Parents were exhausted, teachers were exhausted, kids were exhausted. So everybody's homework last summer was to go out and capture the joy. And the idea is that we bring the joy back to the classroom this year. We focus on teaching and learning that is fun, engaging, provides for deep understanding, and that all of the decisions we make as adults, both in the school community and the larger community, are based on what is best for kids. Our mission as a district is just that: to inspire, challenge, and support all kids as they discover and pursue their full potential. So again, we're focusing on kids and their full potential. That being said, to clarify the definition of educational equity is that each child receives what they need to develop to their full academic and social potential. So embedded within our mission is educational equity, and it's our responsibility as a district to pursue our mission and make sure that we're doing that for each of our kids. If we are meeting our mission, all students will feel a sense of belonging and will be known by name. All students will be treated with respect and dignity. There's no name calling, no use of slurs, no judgment based on identity or family configuration. If we're meeting our mission, all students have access to books that represent different voices and perspectives. All students are given the accommodations necessary to access learning without barriers. All students can enroll in honors and AP courses if they're interested. All students can celebrate religious and cultural holidays without worry about workload. And all means all. Those who have thrived and thrive now can continue to thrive, and those who haven't had access will have access to those same opportunities. So, coming out of the pandemic after the George Floyd murder, we got a letter from several alumni saying, given the situation in the world, we implore our schools to do better. We are not meeting our mission for all kids. Not all kids have the opportunity to reach their full potential. You need to do more. We're expecting you to do more, and we're going to be following to make sure that you do more. So we did some self-reflection. Perhaps we aren't employing all of these pieces of our mission. We called to action DS Aid, which ended up being more than 80 members of our community, students, educators, parents, alumni, caregivers who came together to do some work initially. And in doing all of that, realized we needed some baseline data so we knew what we were doing well and where we could do better and develop a roadmap on what makes sense to do first. So hence we put out a proposal or asked for proposals from agencies who could perform an equity audit. We chose NYU as the partner to help us research to what extent we're meeting our mission. They took quantitative data, qualitative data to answer just that question, and they're here tonight, both on the screen and our advisory members in person, to answer that question. Next steps after we hear tonight's presentation, we will be unpacking and discussing the findings with students, with educators at the November faculty meetings. In November, we're going to have a community meeting for all to come together and ask questions and share ideas, and then developing next steps as we roll out the next iteration of the strategic plan in my new leadership role. So because of kids, we're here. We can all agree that we want to do our work as parents, whether it's for our 2 or 4, 6 kids at home, as educators for the 20 or 80 or 100 kids we have in front of us, as a district for all 2,100 kids. We want to make sure that each one of them can pursue their full potential. So whether you're looking at the microcosm of your house or the macrocosm of the district, we're all here for the same purpose, kids, and I'm hopeful that we can engage in this process and find a way to support all of them. So that's the context, a little journey down the road, and I'll turn it over to NYU after a year's worth of research. Sarah?
Before we launch in, can you clarify what time we need to wrap up? Or
as long as you need.
All right, thanks so much. Thank you so much, and thank you for having us here again this evening. It's been such a pleasure spending the year learning from all of you, working with everyone in Dover-Sherborn. I want to just reiterate our thanks to the advisory board, who have really gone above and beyond and pushing our thinking around data collection, asking really insightful questions, giving detailed feedback on our drafts, and just really making sure they're reflecting the Dover-Sherborn and Boston context and what's feasible and what's possible here. And also thank you to everyone, all of the many, many people who participated in the equity audit in one way or another. I think we've been struck by the degree of agreement around sort of what is going well in the district and what the issues are. And we heard from so many people who are, deeply invested in making the schools work for everyone. Even, students and families for whom the schools are already working quite well. So many people who want to be part of working towards a school system that works for everyone. We can go to the next slide. So Beth already shared some of our data, but just to review, we collected survey responses from nearly 1,800 Dover-Sherborn Public Schools community members. The demographics of our respondents matched the community demographics quite closely, and we're pretty confident that this is a representative sample. We did interviews and focus groups with over 100 individuals. We reviewed administrative data, including demographic, transcript, and discipline data for everyone enrolled in 6th to 12th grade for the last 4 school years, in an attempt to sort of account for the impacts of the pandemic and also get a large enough sample that we could draw some conclusions, since it is a small district, the numbers are pretty small. And we also have reviewed policies, including the course placement policies and student handbooks and discipline policies. We can go ahead to the next slide. So tonight we're going to share the 6 key findings that the report is organized around. These are a slight tweak from the findings that we shared in June. So I'll just read these out, and then we'll go through, and for each finding we'll share a little bit of the data and then our recommendations. So number 1, not everyone is fully supported to grow and thrive in Dover-Sherborn schools. Investments in culturally responsive, equitable curriculum and instruction will help prepare students to navigate and thrive in a diverse multicultural world. Second, despite important signs of change, school culture still center white, Christian, neurotypical, affluent, academically and athletically successful students. Third, many families and students experience racism, ableism, homophobia, and transphobia, and other forms of exclusion, bias, and harassment in the Dover-Sherborn Public Schools community. You can go to the next slide. Fourth, current approaches to discipline aren't serving goals of accountability, repair, and growth. Fifth, educators, I would add, desperately need time, resources, support, and accountability to prepare students to navigate and thrive in a diverse multicultural world. And finally, large majorities of Dover-Sherborn Public Schools community members agree that this is the time for bold, consequential action for equity. So I'll share a little bit about our first finding. We can go, so this is around culturally responsive and equitable curriculum and instruction. We can go ahead to the next slide. I think that's not loading, but it's a graph that shows that there's a decent amount of doubt about how culturally responsive, inclusive, and respectful the curriculum is across different groups of students, parents, and teachers and staff. Around half or less agreed that the curriculum is currently responsive, inclusive, and respectful. You can go to the next slide. So we heard lots of agreement that important work is already underway. We heard a clear consensus that there's a lot of work to be done and that the work has already begun to ensure that students have connection points in their own lives and also windows and doors into other cultures and experiences. We have lots of examples of educators working to ensure that they're teaching accurate history from multiple perspectives. I think the proposal on Indigenous Peoples Day is a great example of that. We heard a lot of appreciation for the racial literacy curriculum that is being piloted at Chickering and Pine Hill and the really dramatic increase in representation in school and classroom libraries, especially at elementaries. And students at the upper grades mentioned English, social studies, world language, and history classes as places where they see more cultural responsiveness and representativeness, with specific praise for the Facing History in Ourselves course. We can go to the next slide. At the same time, parents and students and educators highlighted ways that the curriculum is still centering white and Eurocentric and Christian perspectives. Several Black students characterized the approach to Black history as slavery, MLK, and George Floyd, and I didn't really go beyond that. And I'll share this quote from a student about their assessment of world history, which was representative of other names that we heard. They said, for example, we only talk about Central and South America and India in terms of colonization and exploration. The only things notable are who conquered it, who ruled, and how they took over. Like in the Central and South America civilizations, we barely went into detail on how they lived and focused on who conquered, why, and how. India's talked about British imperialism and not really the culture behind it at all. You can go to the next slide. I'll share just a few recommendations. So we think the curriculum audit that's planned for this year is a really important next step. And as much as possible, the audit should build on work that's already happening and create opportunities for the staff and departments who've been leading the way in that work to support others. We also think it'll be really important to extend this work beyond grade and department boundaries to look at the K-12 experience as a whole and to make sure that instruction is scaffolding and that it's building upon prior knowledge and experiences. One option would be to consider a school-wide model, like the Schools Where We Belong model from Facing History in Ourselves, which has been rated by the Castle Social Emotional Learning Collaborative, that would combine coherent sequenced curriculum with ongoing professional development. And we also note that there's a current pilot by Massachusetts DESE on incorporating evidence of culturally responsive instruction in teacher and administrator evaluation rubrics. So this is a great time to be thinking about how to incorporate that into teacher evaluation systems. I'm going to hand it off to Lisette to talk about access to rigorous coursework across the district.
So in terms of access to rigorous coursework, we looked, as Sarah said, at English and math transcript data for all middle and high school students between the school years of 2018 and 19 and 2021-22 to understand patterns of enrollment in the college prep, honors, and AP courses. We want to acknowledge we have, looking at some of these racial ethnic groups and other demographic groups, we have very small sample sizes, and our patterns can shift over time and over grades. So broadly speaking, what we see in this data is that our Black and Latinx students, students with IEPs, students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and students enrolled in the Mccoy program are underrepresented in honors and advanced placement courses. This finding is mirrored in national data, particularly for high-performing suburban districts. Other research suggests that academic tracking really holds no benefit for lower tracked students and can in fact impede their academic mobility and their preparation for college-level work. Research also suggests that math tracking in middle school can be producing de facto tracking in other subjects as well. This can be due to social groups being structured by academic achievement. Teachers might also consciously or subconsciously adjust the rigor of their courses depending on the perceived ability of the different course sections. Research evidence also shows that unconscious bias and disparities in discipline rates can influence placement in different courses. What we heard from our data is that some teachers, parents, and students shared that resistance to accommodations can limit access to rigorous coursework for students who have an IEP. And then procedures for challenging course placement can privilege families who have more access to and confidence in navigating school bureaucracies. So our recommendations in terms of rigorous coursework is to continue to track data and track some more granular data of characteristics of students within tracks. So who's moving across tracks? What are the outcomes when students or parents try to challenge or give feedback about their course placements? We want to work towards a stance of universal rigor, right? So assume all students are capable of mastering advanced academic content. We want to leverage different kinds of supports to prepare students for advanced coursework. We want to communicate proactively with students and parents about what the placement criteria is and what the available supports are so that we can make placement decisions collaboratively. And then we suggest identifying opportunities for honest community dialogue about what the goals are of academic tracking and who is and who's not being served by this status quo.
Thanks, Lisette. We can move, in the interest of time, I'm not sure how late some of our advisory board members who are planning to present can stay, so I'm going to move very quickly through this. I don't know, for me the graph is not showing, but it may be for you. This is a graph showing that across different groups, around 70 to 80% of people are saying that there are spaces where they feel they belong within Dover-Sherborn Public Schools. So that's great, and most students were able to identify a place where they belong, but we still see substantial minority of people who don't feel that they have a place where they belong. I'll share that some differences that we observed were that middle school Mccoy students were less likely to say yes than other students. At the high school, Black and Latinx students were less likely to say yes than other students. Among parents, Black parents and Mccoy parents were less likely to say yes. And at the middle school, LGBTQ students were more likely to say yes that they had a place where they belonged. I think Douglas shared these findings really articulately in June, so can we just get ahead to slide 18 with it has the recommendations? I think two more. There we go. Thank you. So we shared these recommendations, I think, in some of these recommendations in June. We want to make sure that the places where students and families are really feeling they belong, which include Bridge, Challenge Success, those programs that help everyone belong, and Mccoy Lounge, and student affinity groups, make sure that they're well-resourced and have ongoing support and mechanisms for communicating with school leaders. I'll really highlight the second one here. Around creating opportunities for intentional community building at the classroom and school level. We heard a lot about how much of the intentional focus on culture and community building, community routines, social emotional learning sort of falls off after elementary school. I don't think that's surprising. I think that's probably happening in most districts across the country. But we saw a real hunger for bringing those practices into the upper grades in an age-appropriate way and just making space and time for relationship building and to make sure that everyone is known and seen for who they are and supported. I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Valenzuela, one of our parent members of the advisory board, to talk about finding number 3.
Thanks, Sarah. So the third emerging finding is that many of our students are experiencing being othered, which is from racism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, religious bias, and others. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'm not going to read off a lot of these bullets, so I really do suggest for you to read these slides if you haven't already. What the team saw when going deeper into this data is that the experience is pretty inconsistent. So some say they haven't experienced any bias, some say they do. What we heard though was that the bias and exclusion is coming from peers, educators, and also other adults. Something I think that's really important to highlight here is number 3 on this slide. So when adults are inconsistent and at times don't intervene when incidents occur, that leads to an unsafe environment. This is something I hope we can work on in the coming years for our students to always feel safe and that the adults around them are consistent in their response to the many forms of bias, racism, and other types of aggression. And you're going to see more about that in the recommendations. Next slide. Actually, let's skip this one. The next one, we heard a pretty strong sense of anti-Semitism in the district. And keep going. Also, just more exclusion, bias, harassment for our LGBTQIA students. I heard that pretty loud too, just within our group alone. Like there was our alumni that we had in there, our students that are in there, teachers, parents, that came up quite a bit. And then on, go ahead and go to the next one, so the disability and neurodivergence. Student talked here about coming out of room 108, which I'm assuming must be where students go for additional educational support. And, this is happening for just one kid. That's one kid too many. And so there's really work that we have to do so that everybody in the school district is feeling like they're welcome and they're able to be themselves. Go ahead and keep going. We'll go to the next one. I would just say the burden, I think, is being held pretty fully on the shoulders of our Mccoy kids, and then even our Black, Brown, and Asian kids who aren't necessarily from Mccoy. They are holding that burden of continuous education with their peers, their teachers, their adults, explanation of why something isn't appropriate, and real exasperation, I think. It's felt heavily, and again, even though it's not the majority of the students within the district, it is enough that it needs to be, we need to address it. So the recommendation slide, we're recommending that the district-wide expectations be set and evidence-based professional development occurs to support the district staff in being prepared for when these incidents occur. There's so much happening on everybody in the educational world right now, and so how do we make this in a way so that it's just second nature, that teachers, administrators, all the adults in the room know immediately how to respond, and there's a consistent experience that happens across the school. Another recommendation includes having leadership available to support and intervene if and when parents become involved, and that students could really move from bystander to upstander, and they can become skilled to take action to combat harassment, exclusion, and bias. Okay, moving on.
Thanks, Jen. So we can move right to the next slide. Yep, you can go ahead and move to the next slide. So thinking about addressing bias, incidents, and harassment. Oh,
Is Douglas presenting?
Yeah.
It's Douglas. Sorry, Douglas.
That's okay.
My bad.
All right. Is it okay to use this?
Sure.
Just because I have my
Absolutely.
laptop and I want to face all you guys. All right. One sec. So, thanks for all having me here, and thanks to Sarah and NYU. After I give this part, I want to make a quick statement in regards to the public comment by Bethany Beck, but I will leave that to the end. So, all right. So, addressing bias, incidents, and harassment is a difficult balancing act, simply because, the way that we deal with disciplinary action is different with minors as to adults. And so, we want to balance between protecting the privacy while still protecting marginalized students that were harmed in some way. So I think we can go to the next slide. Students and families see responses to hate speech, bias, and harassment as insufficient. If you'd like, you can read those up there, but for the sake of time, I can say we can move on to the next one as well. School communications from schools and districts sometimes prioritize moving on and calls for unity rather than reckoning with harm. Some families have come to see WeAreDS as a way to sidestep hard conversations. I am a student, I'm on the ground, I can relate to this, and I can see this sometimes where it's the idea that simply because we are DS, there isn't really a problem. And so you can go to the next one. Discipline disparities. Students, parents, and staff raise concerns about students of color, especially Black boys, being disciplined more frequently and harshly than other students. I will just say, in addition to the fact that we have statistical findings on this, I know if you pay close attention, this happens. It's true. So, on. Effective restorative justice models require ongoing investment, transparency, and broad community buy-in. And I'll talk about this in my personal statement at the end. And you can read that. All right. And you can go to the next one. And so these are our recommendations. This is the policy. This is the cool part. Identify a cohort of restorative justice early adopters across roles in schools to pursue ongoing professional development and integrate restorative approaches to their own practice. develop systems to document the use of restorative approaches, to identify successful strategies and refine them over time. And then inventory existing or planned initiatives for integrating restorative approaches across the school day for all students, including middle and high school students. And finally, develop a multi-year restorative justice implementation plan. So can we go to the next slide? All right. So revising handbooks or codes of conduct, and then we have a few areas, but the policy is on the next slide, so I'll just go to the next slide here. All right. So in terms of when we're drafting the handbook, include a diverse array of teachers, guidance staff, non-instructional staff, parents, and students in an ongoing process to revise discipline codes and solicit broad feedback. Reorganize and revise student handbooks to clearly articulate the district and school's values and goals. Integrate positive behavioral supports and non-punitive interventions, including MTSS, into lists of potential responses. Clarify the set of interventions and consequences employed for bias incidents and harassment, or for the procedures and criteria for selecting interventions and consequences, and where possible, simplify language and or provide clear examples of common scenarios and steps taken to address them. And then finally, I'd like to make a quick statement about the email that was written earlier, simply because it is very pertinent to our job and it was directly relevant to what we're doing here at NYU. And this is what I wrote. The concern expressed by the school board member was that there was shoddy data. Let me be clear, we had the vast majority response rate from the school district, and every indication shows that there is a mandate for action in this district. The school board member also expressed worry about collapsing the school district financially by providing $75,000 on this program. May I remind the school board member that $75,000 is less than 0.5% of our annual budget of $27 million. If the school board member believes that the 200 students the member postulated don't deserve 0.5% of our budget for 1 year to make lasting changes in their and future students' lives, then I do not believe that that member can claim to represent the interests of students, parents, and teachers in good faith. Thank you.
Just to clarify for the record, the letter.
That was not made in.
Okay, that's okay. But the letter that I read was not written by a school board member.
Oh no,
It
that's
was
not
written by a community member who asked that we. So I just want to make sure, since we're on TV, it's recorded. This isn't the voice of the school board. But
No, I understand. It was one member. I understand.
No, the person is not a member.
Sorry.
Yeah. They're not just a community member. They are a constituent, a family member, a parent.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make sure.
I'm very sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay.
I mean, and everyone's voice is important, so it's not relevant. It's just important in terms of.
Okay. I just like.
No, we're cool.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
No worries.
I think it was well said.
Yeah.
And I think having been on the inside of the process, it was important to clarify the data that you used.
Yeah.
For all people listening.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Rob Williamson. I am one of the counselors at the high school. I was also on the Equity Audit Advisory Board. I'm going to talk a little bit about, as Douglas started to allude to a little bit in some of the findings from the previous section, faculty training and faculty or educator training and educator hiring. Sort of those are two areas that we explored a little bit in the audit as well. Let's move closer to the mic. Go ahead. So there was broad agreement amongst educators that work still needs to be done, right? There was a sense that some educators are much more prepared than others. And across the teacher population, 32% said that educators are equipped to be handling equity-related discussions, and 42% said that we were not necessarily yet equipped to be handling these discussions. Educators, as we talked a little bit about previously, noted that the guidance staff in the humanities department, so English, history, foreign language, did seem to be handling the majority of these discussions throughout the school district. Go ahead. At the same time, we're tired. It's been a challenging couple of years if you hadn't yet noticed. So one of the findings that we sort of came up with was, while we are talking about how important this is, and absolutely it's very important, we also need to make sure that there's time to devote to these important things, right? That teachers' energy has been sapped somewhat in the past couple of years. And staff have appreciated in the past a lot of the professional development and professional learning opportunities that have been provided. A lot of people mentioned the ideas course that a number of our staff members have had. But at the same time, they need more time, right? More time to role play, more time to observe, more time to play with this idea of having these discussions that are difficult, that we haven't traditionally had on a regular basis. The professional development opportunities have been traditionally geared as a whole towards teachers, and there are a lot of other staff members in our school, special educators, guidance counselors, nurses, that sometimes have felt like the professional learning opportunities haven't necessarily hit them as well. So that was just a sort of side finding as part of this as well. The main recommendations made are, first, we need to see where we're at, so map the existing professional learning opportunities, see where the holes might be. Identifying a core required group of professional development opportunities, and then some optional supplements to go along with that for our entire staff to be on the same page. And then finally, making sure that there is time to do this, looking at staff schedules, making sure that as we are requiring things or as we are encouraging, that teachers also have the ability to spend the time to do it and do it well. We also looked into a little bit hiring and diversity. Students, parents, and staff highlighted the roles that staff of color play in the students' lives and in their ability to feel comfortable. There's a consensus that diversifying the district staff is important, but that there also have been barriers to doing so in the past. Go ahead. So recommendations along hiring would involve continuing developing partnerships with organizations that might be working with new candidates, diverse candidates, prioritizing hiring new staff with experience in this area who may be good at helping students and working with students in some of these marginalized communities, developing strategies to support these folks as well, and then also making sure that these aren't the people that are doing all of the work once they get here, right? We're not just hiring a group of people to work on DEI, right? This is an entire community issue, so making sure that it doesn't just fall to those staff members that are coming in to be handling these things. And that's my little section.
Thank you.
I think I'm the last one, so I'm gonna start your engines. I'm Caleb Dolan. I am a parent of 3 children in the district. My foster daughter, Briseda, is a 9th grader at the high school. My eldest is in 7th grade at the middle school, Tallulah, and I have an elementary school student in 1st grade with Dr. Brown at Pine Hill. Wish she'd been here to see those rock star children. We'll be on.
We're holding a special assembly in the morning. She'll see them.
Okay, excellent. I think I'm reiterating Douglas's point, but we just want to close with the fact that 2 things can be true at once. The vast majority of people responding to the survey said, this school system works for us. But I think the more powerful point is that majority, plus those it didn't work for, want better. That's the mandate for us for action as a community, as a board, as parents, students, staff. The vast majority of people in this district want a district that is not ranked #1 in a random set of metrics in the back of Boston Magazine. That's the whole fact. It's not just SAT scores and whatever. They want to be ranked #1 in kids who are kind, who fight for the right things, who are critical thinkers, who don't just do what they're told, but try to actually make things better. I genuinely, I went in scared about this, and to hear how the vast majority of this community feels inspires me to be part of it moving forward, and I hope does the same for all of you. Slides, yeah. Next one. I think you've heard all of these points where we want urgent action on. One thing I will add is that there's an incredible amount of research that when you diversify teachers and leaders in front, it has incredible impacts for students of color, but it actually has powerful impacts for every single student, having more diverse faculty and staff. So it really benefits all. Last slide. I think I just hope we can invite and not wait. I know Dr. Mccoy and all these great folks are going to do great stuff, but I hope we as a community start engaging in these conversations now. We really want to come together, and these are some of the key questions, like what role does the town play in this? Like, how do we have these conversations? I personally would love anybody who wants to talk about how we start to respond to incidents of hate in a way that teaches, the 7th grader who is saying something they heard on YouTube, saying the transphobic comment, how they actually are confronted and grow from that moment. And I think that's a conversation that we all have to have. And so thank you all so much, and I hope that we are committed in whatever we do at this moment forward to coming back here in a year and seeing measurable progress. That's it. Is it?
Thank you.
All right, great.
All right, Sarah, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's it. I just want to say thank you to Kayla for that really powerful closing, and thank you, Jen, Douglas, and Rob. And thanks for everyone who participated in the equity audit. And we're so excited to, see what happens next and to be part of moving this conversation forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we switch back to the Hollywood Squares? Thank you.
All right, well, thank you to the NYU team and to the many members of our community who served on the advisory group and who participated in this process. Appreciate all of you sharing your time, your experiences, and your expertise to guide us on where we have much work to do. So thank you. And at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions, comments from school committee members.
And Mike is here, remember?
Mark?
Yeah, thank you. In reading this report, I think it's a snapshot of the immense work and thought and planning that went into it. We get to see the product. We were aware of the process of it as well, but the combination of report and presentation, hearing voices and clips, gives it more life. And I think that it has many pieces that really are streamlined already to where we want to be as a district. So I know that it's a lot. Being a staff member in another town nearby, it feels like a lot to add more on, but I think it was mentioned many times that this is in fact just strengthening where we'd like to go anyway. We're kind of heading with other focal areas, and I appreciate having it concisely stated here.
Thank you, Mark. Others, Mark?
I have random thoughts, and I'm just going to come out the way they come out, I guess. But I thought that I was very impressed with the detail and extent of the materials that were given. Part of my thought process throughout is, as a person of color in this district, having raised 2 kids of color in this district, there wasn't one surprise in there. There wasn't one thing that, over a cup of coffee I could have, relate any person of color, any person in a marginalized population would, it all resonates, it all makes sense. And I was thinking, as we're discussing the, just the incidents that people experience. I mean, my own kids, when people find out, because my son presents not black, but he said as soon as people would find out that I'm black, they'd ask me for the N-word pass. That's what it is. Like, that's happening in our schools. It's like, my one thought is perfectly accurate, it makes perfect sense, and my other thought is, let's take this very seriously, and because it's real. All these words on these pages and on these slides are experiences that our kids are having on a day-to-day basis. And I could go on for days about other experiences that my kids have had. And yes, and as Caleb said, 2 things can be true. This was a great district for my kids. My kids are happy, confident, educated, doing well in college. I mean, my son's in art school now, whatever. But that's partly inspired by Mr. Dupre, so 2 things can be true. My other thought is, around the comment of, the burden of, relaying this information is on, the Mccoy kids and the kids of color. And, I had said to Beth at one point, let's stop asking them what their experience is. We know what their experience is. They told us loudly, they told us clearly, we have the information, let's act on it. My other thought is around resources. Let's make sure that we make room for all of this work, from the educators to whatever is needed to ensure that we are doing the tracking and all the other recommendations that are being made. Let's make sure that we've allocated the right resources. And in response to anyone who would say, and that's taken away from other things we could be doing. This work benefits everyone across the board. This is not a zero-sum game. It benefits everyone. It improves all of our systems. And for anyone who doesn't think that, I don't know what to say to you other than read a book, read some studies. It's out there. And those are my comments. But I thought this was great. I thought it was money well spent. I thought it was really well presented. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I piggyback on what you were saying? I just want to say, whatever happens with your school system doesn't stay in the school. It affects these kids at home. It affects these kids on the field. It affects these kids on social media. It follows them. And it's not only the kids, because sometimes it impacts the parents. Because what happens with the kids impacts the family as a whole. And it's not always the kids, it's sometimes parent on parent too. So what we're doing here is not just within the school system. It's outside. And it follows and it goes from here and beyond. So I just wanted to say that this is exceptionally important. And yes, it is student, but it's student, it's parent, it's family, it's environment, and it's also teaching. So, it's a micro web that just keeps building out.
I thank you for your sharing that view, and by no means do I wish to squelch this important discussion, but this is the school committee's opportunity now to react to this, and I'm sorry, it's just our procedure is to have the community comments come first, but you're more than welcome to reach out to school committee members.
Okay, I'm sorry about leaving my mouth.
No worries. Other comments, questions, concerns from school committee folks?
I guess I want to first of all thank the members of NYU, the study team, as well as all of our community members and educators who participated as part of the steering team, and then just all the people who offered their thoughts, reflections, answered surveys, participated in focus groups. I think to echo what Lynn shared earlier, there was nothing, as a white person who has had 3 white children graduate from the school district, there were 0 things that were surprising to me. And I felt that this audit did a very good job at looking at race and also at issues of LGBTQIA community members and also at issues of the disability community. And I do have a child who was part of that community, as well as one who's part of the LGBT community. And so, there was nothing in any of this report that surprised me as a parent of alumni and a community member here. I think the thing that did surprise me was the granular data and the specific quotes and evidence that was presented, not because I was surprised by the content, but by the clarity and the consistency and just the raw power of people's personal experiences. It was really important to hear that. And the other thing that did surprise me was the degree to which, alluding to what Caleb spoke to earlier, the degree to which this community collectively wants to participate in change. I think that was the question that I had as a community member and as a representative of the school committee. I was not clear going into this whether or not there was a mandate from our greater community to change and grow. I wasn't sure if many of the families, particularly the white and affluent families, were comfortable with the status quo. And the message that I hear from this audit and from the depth and the quality of the data is that there is, in fact, a desire on the part of most of our community members to be part of this change. And specifically, you know, in the data at the end that spoke to, are we preparing kids for the greater world? As a parent who sent 3 children out into the real world, all 3 of them got an excellent education and have excellent relationships, ongoing relationships with faculty members. They have great affection and respect for their time at Dover-Sherborn High School. And each of them describes their time as largely existing in a bubble. That, in fact, the thing that was hard about college or living in, you know, the greater city or wherever their life takes them is that it is not at all like Dover and Sherborn. And so for me, part of this work is to benefit all the children, because you could be an A+ student and go to Harvard, and if you don't know how the real world works, you're going to have a really hard experience there. And so I think that you just have to keep in mind that this is a both and that by doing all the work, by attending to kids' mental health and their social emotional learning, and making sure that we're making this a positive and supportive experience for everyone, that we will in fact bring all of our students to the next, you know, thing that comes in their lives, and hopefully more students can share in feeling affection for the district and wanting to come back and wanting to be associated with it. So I really appreciate all the work that you've done, and I'm looking forward to getting started on the recommendations. I also appreciate the clarity and doability of the recommendations, because, you know, looking at it as an educator who is often overwhelmed by, you know, the to-do list or things that go on teachers' backs, you know, we can't eat the whole elephant today, but these are steps that we can do, and they're measurable and actionable, and I appreciate them.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yes, please, Liz.
Thanks again to everyone. I just want to piggyback really quickly that as a tired educator, I hear what everyone's saying, but I think that we heard loud and clear from our educators and from our community that we all want to do better. And as a human race, it is our job to continually grow and do better. And so I don't think we need to question that anymore. It is important that we take action, because the lack of action every day that passes is a kid who's suffering in some way. And there are many kids thriving, and most are, but if there's just one, we need to hurry up and do something. So I too appreciate that this is very clear what we can do, and I'm excited that you guys are ready to take off.
Other questions, comments?
I think this did a nice job sort of summarizing many of the issues. It's probably not an entire list. As we go through this, I'm sure that other issues will present themselves that we weren't aware of. We asked the question in a different way, whatever it might be. I would say that we as a joint school committee and the kind of administrative team, we're going to be evaluated on our action associated with a lot of the recommendations that are here. And I would just ask each one of us to commit to thinking about being bold, don't be afraid to fail, and making sure that we are incredibly clear in what the actions are that we are taking and the why, so that we can both measure the impact and that we can make sure that that dialogue, that two-way street of communication, this doesn't work if it's a bunch of people come up with some ideas and flopping it on folks. It's got to be a kind of a two-way street. So I think communication is going to be incredibly important as we go through this, and I think we'll all learn as a community and be better for it, for sure. So again, thank you to everybody. This was great.
If I may chime in, piggybacking on that, I mean, I had so many reactions to reviewing this report. I was, stressed to hear yet again the ways in which we have fallen short of our vision and our mission of supporting all children to reach their fullest potential. Hopeful, however, that we have the knowledge and the will to do better. And also a bit overwhelmed at knowing where to start and how to start taking actions and measuring our progress. And so I know while all of the recommendations, and there's a rich source of recommendations in this report, are important, I was curious to hear from the folks at NYU or our advisory group or administration suggestions on precisely where we start. And I didn't see that as much in the report. I think, Caleb, your slides, you gave us sort of 3 high priority areas, and I don't know, perhaps that's because the need is most urgent, the solutions are most clear, but I'd love to hear a little more in the way of guidance on what do we tackle first and how do we get this really off the ground.
Sarah might be.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. So I don't necessarily think there's a wrong place to start. I think these recommendations are pretty interconnected, and there's a lot of overlap. I think, I think instruction relates to belonging, culture, and discipline, all those things. I think my recommendation would be to start. I know that there's been plans to conduct a curriculum audit. I think that's a good place to start. I think there's already a lot of work that's been done. There's a lot of momentum, and sort of I think formalizing that work and looking across the whole district, I think, is really important and a good next step. And I also think thinking about discipline policies, maybe tackling sort of reworking the code of conduct could be a good place to establish some norms around, community input. How do we work as a whole district, like engaging families and students in that work. Thinking about what are our values around discipline and culture, how we handle bias incidents. I think that could lay some groundwork for longer term conversations around restorative justice. I think I think curriculum discipline, there's already some really great work that's happening. There's some momentum to build on. I think those might be good places to start having some broader community conversations in the service and sort of moving to the next steps. But I don't know necessarily think there's a wrong place to start.
Thank you, Sarah.
Do I get to sneak in a response to that?
I think so.
As a presenter.
Yeah. I definitely would agree that figuring out how we address the hate speech is really important because that is such a palpable impact on kids' experience and you can't go wrong with investing in an educator. Like that would be the first resource investment I would argue for, is just how you invest in teachers and staff. And just one thought that you inspired me to think of is I would continue to find ways as a board to hear students and alumni. Just whether it's begging them to come and just that's part of the power of this, is that it's the direct voice of kids and without filter. And if you can do that, it will keep, I think, all of us honest. So that's not, I don't speak for NYU there.
Okay, Douglas.
Yeah, as an advisory group, sure.
I just wanted to make, I wanted to say sorry because no, hold on, let me explain. I was under the assumption that the email was from a school board member, not a private individual. I don't know if I would have responded in that way. I mean, I still agree with the sentiment because it came from the heart, but so I apologize for any strangled toes or whatever. That wasn't my intention. But I also do feel like it's important to address there is a significant minority of people who have woefully misunderstood the purpose of this and also how big an effect apparently financially it has on our budget, because it doesn't. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Other school committee?
Maggie.
I guess just to echo what Caleb said about the addressing bias incidents and challenging speech. And this is a little bit of not my school committee hat, but my educator hat, just because I've had a lot of involvement in specific professional development around that. And I guess it makes me grateful because that actually is something that people know how to do. And it is extremely based in research that there are just a set of very straightforward actions that we teach adults in workplaces, in school situations, exactly what to do when they encounter hate speech or bias incidents. And it's like well documented. There's lots and lots of research and lots of resources around it. And there was an example in the report around we need time to role play and practice. And like that is actually the thing you need to do. It's free. You don't need to hire consultants. Like it's like here are the 4 things you do. Here's how you do it, and then we just have to practice. And that is so within the possibilities of our wheelhouse and such a powerful way to, I think, as Jen said, like knowing that every staff member will respond in a consistent way if a kid says a racial slur or makes a comment about somebody that's biased, that people, and because we do have staff members who want to respond, but they don't know, and they don't know if they say the wrong thing, if their boss will back them up, and what if, and it just is like anxiety that happens in the minute, and then it gives you like analysis paralysis, and then the moment's over. And so I think I'm grateful because that is something we don't have to spend $1 million to fix, and it's totally fixable. And so it gives me great comfort that we can do that. So that's all.
And then also, like you all, based on the report, we all know that there is a need, and education and staff, education and helping our staff is one of the basic steps that we should start from. And I think since we are discussing the central office restructuring and having a professional human resources, I think maybe we can at some point tie that one with the staff support and education to make this happen sooner than later.
Thank you, Goldie. Mark?
Can I say one thing? I know we're doing like round 2 here. But I'm so much looking forward to the community night in November, because I think to like Candace's point, I mean, people want to just unload where they're at right now with this. And no matter where you're at, just come to learn, come to show support, come even if you have questions. I just think it's so helpful and like so needed for us to come together. And like I want to be like, open circle, what do you want to ask? And I just feel like, the school committee format is different for good reasons, but then we also need the community nights where we really encourage our neighbors, encourage people to show up and participate.
Absolutely. I mean, it's collective work for us all to undertake, so, yeah.
Do we know when that is?
We have a tentative date that we need to confirm.
Okay.
But that'll go out with the email along with all the links and reports and things.
And if we could get a copy of this presentation.
Yeah, that would be great.
Also to make available on our website, I think that would be great.
Yep.
I just want to note, I think one of our advisory board members, Leah Lee, is happy to chime in.
Oh, Leah.
Yeah, I'm Leah Lee. I have been teaching at Dover-Sherborn High School for 11 years. So I also became an American citizen for 7 years. I immigrated from China, and 24 years ago, and I still have this heavy accent as an immigrant. And before, I was ashamed because my heavy accent, so I didn't participate a lot of this, like our community meetings, because I was very not comfortable with my English. But after all these years, my students, my colleagues, like after I attend this our audit advisory committee, I think being a part of the community, I need to stand up to say something in my heart, and that's my responsibility. But I want everyone to be aware. So being someone as a minority is a lot. I as an adult, I need the courage. I need the energy to stand up.
So for all these years, I didn't because I was so exhausted. So when the committee member asked, how should we begin to this work? I think we, as a human being, we need to know each other. That's the essential as a community. In the same building, some of my colleagues, I didn't know them for 11 years. Why? I didn't have time. So for every prep time, I have to prepare for my class, or I think all the educators do. And we all have lovely heart. That's why we choose being an educator. And also for our students, some of my students, I didn't know, and they won championship, or they had, their grandfather passed away. I didn't know that. Why? Because we need to teach in the class, and that's as a professional. But I think the human being, we need the time to know each other. We need the space and time to know each other. When we know each other better, and we know everyone, they didn't have a hate in their, in our community. We didn't have hatred. We just have very kind to be, to want to be kind to each other. But when we don't have time, we have a lot of misunderstanding. And that's the key for some of our members. So I just hope, if the school committee and our school, I think we have wonderful, wonderful school and a wonderful, wonderful school committee. Just for me, as an example, when President Trump said the Chinese virus, and that year I have 40 students sign up for Chinese. And this, when we have the Chinese and the American have this conflict, I have 26 students sign up Chinese. I know it's not related, but I was touched by this community who support, who have kind hearts, and I have no doubt about it. So the question is, when we have time, to know each other, I think this is definitely will be better. And I really thank all the school committee for your hard work, our administrators, all the hard work, and our board. I think everyone works, including our students, everyone works hard, and this is a modern world problem. The pace is too fast, and we need to slow down and have time to give human beings the space and the time to know each other and connect, and that will give us a better, feel closer to each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. Thank you. Any other school committee comments? All right. Thank you again to everyone who participated in this. We have a lot of work to do, but I am hopeful that we are beginning along the road, so thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the superintendent entry plan and goals. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I think we should give people another exit strategy.
You said it. Thank you, everyone.
No, so you're welcome to pack up too, Lucan. Thank you so much for all of your help.
Well, I'm the microphone, so.
Oh.
In that event, thanks for your staying.
You can relax a little bit though. All right.
All right.
Thank you. So I will be brief because I know you've all had an opportunity to read both my entry plan as well as proposed goals. So although I've been in the district for 5 years, beginning year 6, and know quite a few of the community members, I know the entire faculty and have a great sense of all that Dover-Sherborn is and could be, this is an opportunity for me to sit in a new seat and take take an opportunity to collect data and feedback again as to how have we done in the last 5 years, what are we doing well that we want to hold sacred as Dover-Sherborn, and perhaps what do we want to explore or do differently moving forward. So my entry plan is recommended with the support of the new superintendent induction program, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. It is intended to take a year-long process where I'll be doing lots of interviews, surveys, building and classroom observations this fall, looking at patterns and trends that we're seeing across the district that I'll share with you in late winter, and then coming up with some recommendations that I will then bring back to the leadership team to develop a more pronounced strategic objective and action step items over the summer into next year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm about halfway through my individual interviews at this point with school committee members, leaders, town officials, and look forward to continuing those. And then should you approve my goals and entry plan, I'll then be sharing it with the larger community and scheduling some focus groups with groups of teachers, groups of community members, groups of parents to collect information that way as well. I'm also going to say that the information that has come from the equity audit, I think, is well timed in that I can take all of this information, work with you, the leadership team, to figure out next steps and how we break this out into small, manageable chunks, because as I said, we can't eat all of the elephant at once. So that'll all fit into my strategic planning process as well. And I'm so thrilled to be working with Denny Conklin, our new assistant superintendent, who is also engaging in an entry plan and collecting information and asking questions of students, teachers, and parents as well. So together we'll have twice as much data, because we're kind of dividing and conquering all that we can ask and should ask of our community. So that said, moving on to goals, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed after this presentation. There's other things I'm supposed to be doing too. However, this fits into one of the 3 districts goals, which is, thinking about the equity audit and what we should do right now today to support kids and help kids, and then what we should be doing for the long term in terms of larger, more systemic changes, as well as the strategic planning process and continuing to work on MTSS, which, hearing that mentioned a few times throughout this presentation, is a reminder that all of these pieces fit together. This is not just DEI work, this is not just MTSS, this is just not preparing kids for the future, it's all the same thing. So I'm really excited that the school and district improvement goals are capturing all of that and working together, rowing in the same direction. In terms of my personal goals for the evaluation process, again, you've seen them before. It's going through the entry process. It's my first goal. Maintaining momentum. All of the work that was already in place and all the evaluations in support of the principals will continue. And then engaging in the new superintendent induction program, building relationships, getting feedback, asking questions along the way will be my third goal. I propose those to you as my entry plan and goals for the year, and ask that you consider approving them.
All right. Any questions for Beth, or shall we move on to taking our votes? All right. So I'll start with Dover School Committee. Is there a motion from the Dover School Committee to adopt the entry plan and goals as outlined by Ms. McCoy in our packets and her presentation this evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Liz. Is there a second? Thanks, Goldie. Oh, and Colleen's raising her hand. I think we'll come to you first for the vote then, Colleen. Colleen?
Colleen Burt, yes.
Liz?
Liz Grossman, yes.
Goldie?
Yes.
And Sarah Gutierrez Dunn, yes. Okay. Maggie, you want to take it away?
Sure. For the region, since all of us are in person, we'll just do it with a voice vote. Is there a motion to accept Beth's goals as stated in our packet and shared tonight? So moved. Angie Johnson. Angie Johnson. Is there a second? Lynn Collins, second. Any discussion? Fantastic. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, let the record reflect it was 5-0.
Amanda?
All right. I'd like to invite a motion from Sherborn to adopt the entry plan and goals as outlined by Superintendent McCoy.
So moved. Dennis Squat.
Thank you, Dennis. Second?
Second, Christine Walsh.
Thanks, Christine. And any discussion? No? Good. All right. So all in favor of approving the motion and adopting the goals?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Great, thank you. And just to follow up to that, I'd like to have an opportunity to introduce my coach from the new superintendent induction program. As you know, I'll be part of this program for 3 years, the first year being obviously the most intense. I mentioned before that there are 24 new superintendents in Massachusetts, 12 are from within their district, 12 are from outside, and we're all assigned a coach who works with us to build our leadership capacity, our presentational skills, I'm taking notes at this speed, as well as be on speed dial should I have any questions. So I am honored to be working with John Sills. He's a former superintendent from Bedford and a former principal from Bedford, a former social studies teacher from Brookline, and has done incredible work for kids all across the country. For those of you who know the Tenacity Challenge, John is behind that. For those of you who know the NEASC accreditation process being revamped to actually benefit kids in the work of school, John is behind that, as well as some incredible DEI work in all of the districts he's touched. So it's been wonderful getting to know him. We very much share the same values and goals around teaching, learning, and equity, so we can speak the same language, and he understands where I'm coming from and kind of what our vision is as a district. So without further ado, John, would you like to say anything?
Thank you for that introduction.
Yeah.
I'm flattered. I didn't know it. Very briefly, Beth is a member of the 13th cohort of the new superintendent's induction program, which is co-sponsored by DESE and Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. And I feel very, very lucky to be working with Beth. I'm just very impressed by her values and her skills and her commitment to the two things that are core to the MSIP program, which are teaching and learning, particularly with an emphasis on deep learning and equity, making sure that all students, with a strong focus on anti-racism, but all students who are either marginalized or somehow left out, that they develop a sense of belonging, that the schools create a culture of belonging and rigorous achievement for all kids. And each member of the cohort in their first year gets up to 6 hours a month of coaching. That can include my attendance at leadership team meetings, walking the schools with Superintendent Mccoy, discussing how she develops her leadership, etc. And the kind of workshop of coursework, which again is more intensive in the first year and is a step-down process. It focuses really, it's a coaching position which includes some mentoring, but we define coaching as really helping the superintendent to develop her leadership skills, her thinking, her strategic thinking in moving districts forward around teaching and learning and equity, and then some mentoring around crises, around giving suggestions on how to proceed. Anyway, I feel very fortunate to be working with the superintendent of this district, and I look forward to seeing you all along the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right, thank you. That brings us, I think, to the consent agenda, which is the minutes of our June 14th, 2022 joint meeting. Do members have comments, suggestions on the minutes? You know I always do. No, sorry. So under number 3, number 4 rather, presentation, maybe we should specify that it was by Pine Hill 3rd grade students on the federal holiday. Under number 6, I would suggest it should be freshmen, plural. And there's a couple typos in the equity audit paragraph, survey data, including instead of in eluding demographic differences, research-based, not baked. And the administration is recommending a 25-cent increase under the food price increase as opposed to at 25 cents. And then the only other things I would suggest, we refer to the contract negotiations subcommittee as opposed to committee under bullet 8, and reflect correct spelling on Goalie Saper's last name, or Goalie Saper's first name in that paragraph, and my last name throughout. Sorry. So, that being said,
Can I add, this is maybe a bigger question, but in the interest of inclusivity and equity, do we need to rethink freshmen
First-year students.
as a designation for first-year
Ninth
students?
grade.
And make it gender neutral?
Could certainly say ninth graders.
First-year students or ninth graders.
Any other comments? All right, so is there a motion from the Dover School Committee to adopt the consent agenda as amended?
Oh, so moved.
Thanks, Liz. Second?
Colleen Burt, second.
Thanks, Colleen. Any discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Liz?
Liz Grossman, yes.
Goalie?
Close it, yes.
Colleen?
Colleen Burt, yes.
And Sarah Gutierrez Dunn, yes. Amanda, over to you.
Sure. Do I have a motion from Sherborn to accept the consent agenda with the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Dennis. In a second?
Christine, our second.
Thank you, Christine. And all in favor? Aye. Great. Thanks. Maggie?
I have a motion to accept the consent agenda with the minutes as revised by Sarah Gutierrez Dunn.
So moved.
And Amanda Brown.
And Amanda Brown, sorry. Motion made by Mark Healy. Do I have a second? Second by Kate Potter. Okay. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nobody? Thank you. We're good.
All right, thanks, everyone. That concludes our meeting this evening. If everyone, can we adjourn by unanimous consent?
Yes.
At 8:55.